Imagine a prison so secure that no one has ever successfully escaped, yet thousands still fight to survive its walls every day. In Northern California, near the Oregon border, Pelican Bay State Prison is more than concrete and razor wire. It is a fortress designed to isolate, control, and break. From the moment you step inside, every movement, every sound, every second is monitored. Escaping is nearly impossible. Surviving is the real challenge. Pelican Bay State Prison opened in 1989 as California's answer to overcrowding and rising gang violence. Located in Crescent City, its remote setting was deliberate. Surrounded by dense forest and coastal fog, it is far from major population centers, making both escape and rescue improbable. According to the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, CDCR, the facility was built specifically to house the state's most serious criminal offenders under maximum security conditions. CDCR Annual Report, 1990. Unlike older prisons, Pelican Bay incorporated lessons from decades of security failures elsewhere. Architects designed a dual layout, a 1,056-bed security housing unit, SHU, for high-risk inmates, and a 1,500-bed general population yard. The SHU was the first purpose-built Supermax in California, modeled in part on the federal Marion Penitentiary's control unit. This deliberate separation of populations and the remoteness of the site created a prison within a prison. The SHU at Pelican Bay is infamous. Each cell measures roughly 8 by 10 feet, with solid concrete walls and a perforated steel door. Prisoners spend about 24 hours per day inside, with no direct contact with other inmates. Cells are organized into pods of 8, monitored from an enclosed surveillance booth. Guards can open and close cell doors remotely, eliminating the need for physical interaction. According to Ashker vs. Governor of California, NIA Court Filings, 2012-2015, many inmates were held in these conditions for years, some for decades, without meaningful review. The step-down program that later emerged came only after lawsuits and hunger strikes pressured the state. Until then, the SHU operated as an almost airtight isolation system designed to neutralize gang leaders and chronic troublemakers. Physically, Pelican Bay is a fortress. The perimeter is layered with double fences topped by razor ribbon, electronic motion detectors, and ground sensors. Guard towers overlook every approach, each manned with armed officers authorized to use lethal force. In the SHU, inmates rarely leave their cells except for showers or yard time, an individual concrete pen sometimes referred to as a dog run. Former CDCR officials have stated in interviews, Los Angeles Times 2013, that Pelican Bay was engineered specifically to prevent the type of coordinated escapes seen at San Quentin or Folsom in earlier decades. Because the SHU limits inmate movement and contact, there is no opportunity to plan complex breakouts. Even if an inmate managed to breach a cell, they would face multiple locked sally ports, electronic doors, and immediate armed response before ever reaching the perimeter fence. If escaping is nearly impossible, survival becomes the focus. Prisoners and researchers alike have documented severe psychological tolls. A 2012 study by Dr. Craig Haney of UC Santa Cruz found high rates of anxiety, depression, hallucinations, and cognitive decline among Pelican Bay SHU prisoners compared to general population inmates. Haney, 2012. Testimonies submitted to the California legislature describe men waking up in soiled clothing or on bare concrete after days without human contact. Others reported losing track of time and forgetting how to speak normally. The American Civil Liberties Union and Dissent Magazine, 2013, have called Pelican Bay's SHU a paradigm of long-term solitary confinement, whose effects amount to psychological torture. These accounts are not isolated. They formed the basis of statewide hunger strikes in 2011 and 2013 that drew over 29,000 participants across California prisons. Pelican Bay's SHU is divided into X-shaped pods, each containing 8 solitary cells. At the center of each pod is a glassed-in control booth where 2 officers monitor every door, intercom, and camera feed. Through perforated steel doors, inmates can see little more than a blank corridor. Meals arrive on plastic trays passed through a slot. Showers occur 3 times a week in a stall behind another locked door. According to CDCR architectural schematics presented in Madrid versus Gomez, 1995, the SHU was explicitly designed to minimize staff exposure and inmate movement. Everything, lighting, doors, even water flow, is controlled from the booth. This system not only reduces assault risk, but also makes clandestine planning or contraband movement extraordinarily difficult. Unlike older California prisons, Pelican Bay's high-tech security eliminates direct guard-prisoner contact. Cell doors slide open electronically. Surveillance cameras feed into a central OPA rations center that can lock down entire blocks with a button. Armed gun rails line the exercise yards and housing units, and guards are trained to respond to disturbances within seconds. According to the Los Angeles Times, July 1990, each housing unit is backed by a quick response tactical team with non-lethal and lethal options. This layered security approach means even minor disturbances are quickly contained, making coordinated escape attempts virtually impossible. Despite housing some of California's most dangerous offenders, Pelican Bay has seen no confirmed successful escapes since it opened. A few attempts, smuggling saw blades, tampering with doors, or trying to overpower staff, were intercepted quickly. In 1992, for example, 2 inmates were caught with a crude plan to cut through a ventilation grill. They were moved to administrative segregation before any action could be taken. CDCR Incident Report, 1992. These episodes underscore how difficult it is to even begin an escape plan inside a system built to prevent inmate movement and surveillance blind spots. Because physical escape is nearly impossible, prisoners focus on mental survival. Former Pelican Bay SHU prisoner Todd Ashker testified in federal court that he developed elaborate mental exercises, memorizing legal codes, visualizing his childhood, to keep his mind from unraveling. Ashker Declaration, 2012. Others report creating makeshift chessboards on the cell floor, playing by memory with cellmates via shouted moves through vents. These coping mechanisms, while creative, reveal how starvation of human contact drives inmates to build inner worlds to survive. Medical and psychological experts have documented the toll. In Madrid versus Gomez, 1995, a federal judge concluded that SHU conditions posed a serious risk of psychological harm to inmates with pre-existing mental illness. Subsequent studies by Dr. Craig Haney and the Center for Constitutional Rights showed elevated rates of self-harm, paranoia, and cognitive decline. Some prisoners reported hallucinating voices or losing the ability to read. These findings helped fuel a growing national debate about Supermax prisons and solitary confinement, with Pelican Bay as a prime example cited in law reviews, UN reports, and American Bar Association papers. By the late 2000s, frustration boiled over. Inmates accused the CDCR of using gang validation to keep them in the SHU indefinitely. Under this policy, being identified as a gang associate, even through drawings or names in letters, could mean years in solitary without formal charges. Prisoner-authored declarations, later compiled by advocacy groups such as Prisoner Hunger Strike Solidarity, describe men aging decades behind perforated steel doors with no clear path back to general population. These grievances planted the seeds for collective action that would erupt in 2011 and 2013 hunger strikes, catapulting Pelican Bay into national headlines. By July 2011, frustration inside Pelican Bay's SHU reached a breaking point. A group of inmates, including long-term SHU residents Todd Ashker, Arturo Castellanos, and Sitawa Jamaa, circulated a manifesto outlining 5 core demands. These included ending indefinite solitary confinement, improving food quality, increasing phone access, expanding educational programs, and reforming the gang validation process. Over 6,000 inmates across California joined a coordinated hunger strike that began on July 1st. California Prison Hunger Strike Solidarity, 2011. Conditions were stark. Trays of untouched food collected outside cell doors. Guards monitoring vital signs rather than delivering meals. Family members rallied outside the prison gates and at the state capitol. While the strike officially ended after 3 weeks with promises of policy review, many demands remained unmet. Nevertheless, The action marked the first time Pelican Bay's isolated prisoners had forced the state into a public dialogue about SHU conditions. 2 years later, the prisoners escalated. On July 8, 2013, more than 29,000 inmates in 24 California prisons refused meals, making it the largest coordinated prison hunger strike in U.S. history. California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation press release, 2013. Pelican Bay was again the epicenter. This time, the strike lasted nearly 2 months, ending only after lawmakers held hearings and promised reforms. Inside the SHU, men lost 20 to 30 pounds. According to a Dissent Magazine report, 2013, some fainted from dehydration. At least one participant, Billy Guerrero Cell, died under disputed circumstances after requesting medical attention. Sacramento Bee, 2013. The CDCR initially called the strike a gang power play, but public opinion shifted as photographs and testimonies emerged of gaunt men behind perforated steel doors. The spectacle forced a national conversation on solitary confinement, an outcome the prisoners had risked their lives to achieve. The hunger strikes laid the groundwork for a class-action lawsuit filed in 2012. Ashker, vice-governor of California, represented by the Center for Constitutional Rights, long-term SHU prisoners argued that indefinite solitary confinement violated the Eighth Amendment's prohibition of cruel and unusual punishment. In 2015, California settled the suit, agreeing to end indeterminate SHU terms based solely on gang affiliation and to transfer many prisoners to less restrictive units. CCR press release 2015. This settlement fundamentally altered Pelican Bay's role. By 2016, the SHU population had dropped from over 1,100 to a few hundred. Men who had spent 20-30 years in isolation were moved to general population or new restricted custody programs. While advocates hailed the settlement as historic, many cautioned that solitary confinement still existed under different names and conditions. For prisoners emerging from decades of isolation, freedom inside prison brought its own challenges. Former SHU inmates reported difficulty adjusting to noise, crowds, and social interaction after years alone. A 2017 UC Irvine study documented heightened anxiety, hypersensitivity to sound, and sleep disturbances among men transferred out of Pelican Bay's SHU. Some described feeling like a ghost in the yard, unsure how to start conversations or even where to stand. At the same time, reforms sparked tension among staff who feared that releasing validated gang members into general population could reignite violence. CDCR expanded de-escalation training and built step-down programs to ease the transition. Pelican Bay remained maximum security, but its identity shifted from an all-out isolation machine to a test case for rolling back Supermax practices. Today, Pelican Bay stands as both a cautionary tale and a model. Its fortress-like design proved that mass escape from a Supermax could be rendered nearly impossible. Yet its SHU also became a global symbol of the harms of long-term solitary confinement. UN Special Rapporteurs on Torture cited Pelican Bay in reports condemning U.S. practices. Academic studies, documentaries, and even state legislatures from New York to Colorado now reference the Pelican Bay model when debating solitary limits. The prison still holds some of California's highest security inmates under tight control. But the combination of hunger strikes, litigation, and public scrutiny has forced changes once thought unthinkable. Whether these reforms endure, and whether Supermax prisons can truly balance security with human dignity, remains an open question. For the men inside, escape may still be impossible, but survival now includes a sliver of hope for something different. Pelican Bay was built to be escape-proof, and by every measurable standard it has succeeded. No tunnels, no helicopters, no Hollywood-style breakouts, just a fortress on California's northern edge where even the idea of escape seems absurd. But the story of Pelican Bay shows that security and survival are not the same thing. From the outside, its layers of concrete, steel, and sensors represent control. Inside, the real battle has always been over the human mind. Decades of isolation produced psychological scars so deep that lawsuits, hunger strikes, and legislative hearings became the only way prisoners could make themselves heard. Those actions reshaped the SHU and sparked a national debate on solitary confinement that still reverberates through U.S. prisons today. For viewers, Pelican Bay stands as both warning and lesson. It warns what can happen when a system designed for control loses sight of human cost. And it offers a lesson. Even in a place where escape is impossible, collective action and public scrutiny can open cracks in the most fortified walls. Whether those cracks lead to lasting reform or simply a new version of the old model remains a question for California, and for all of us who live beyond the razor wire.